Shalakbay, Tesuque Evon Peter Oji, Vashank Ogatinithi, Neetsaii Gwich'in, Neetsaii Jewish Ithli, Zagishigan Jitsho Ithli. It's a good thing they let me know that I had until 5:30 Alaska time to give my presentation. So, no, on a serious note, I realized that the conference is running late and that people have plans and are busy, and I want to honor that as best as possible. And so I'll do my best to take what was almost an hour of sharing down to a smaller piece of time, and hope that I can still convey to you some of the thinking that I wanted to share. Before I begin, I wanted to acknowledge all of our ancestors for all that they had done to provide for us to be able to be here today and still be retaining a lot of the knowledge and understandings and teachings that we have within this room right now, that have been handed down to us. I want to acknowledge my wife and children who may or may not be in the room with us still, but they came with me here. And you may have seen them. My wife is Ine Begay, and my daughter's Nana Ejin Chalil. And it means a lot for me to be able to be doing the work that I do in the world and have the support and companionship of my family to get to be with me in these times. I want to also acknowledge all the elders and teachers from my own community and from many other communities who have taken the time with me over the years to share with me what they knew, what they understood, so that I could be able to be in the place that I am today as someone who's carrying these teachings and sharing them with the world as best as I can. And then I also really want to thank all of you for continuing to have that patience, as Emilio said, to be here, to listen to the words I have to share with you. I want to take us into an imagination place for a second. I want you to imagine in the far north part of America a landmass with 365 million acres of land. I want you to imagine tens of thousands of bowhead whale and beluga whale migrating along the ocean shores, herds of caribou that reach up to 130,000 animals in one herd, migrating freely upon their traditional routes, tens of millions of wild salmon migrating up streams and up rivers that some rivers extend over 1,000 miles long. I want you to imagine gatherings of eagles, of 1,000 eagles gathering in one place every year to have communion among one another. I want you to imagine millions of acres of land covered with blueberries, blackberries, salmon berries, high bush and low bush cranberries, mushrooms, roots, and many myriad of medicinal plants. I want you to imagine also moose, ducks, geese, numbering in the hundreds of thousands, rabbits, muskrat, beaver, and many other fine cuisine, across the land. And now I want you to imagine 130,000 indigenous people living in over 240 communities, most of which, over 90% of which, have no road access. And if they're lucky, they have a little one-room store, living as our ancestors had lived, with an intimate relationship to the land, to the animals, to the elements, carrying on their way of life and their relationships intimately to one another, because that happens when you live in a small community for 10,000 years. So I come from one of those communities. It's called Vashanko. It's in the northeastern part of Alaska. It's over 150 miles from the nearest road. I had the privilege and the honor of growing up there with no electricity, with no running water, hauling water to my cabin, keeping a fire going 8 months out of the year to stay warm with wood from the forest, and being with my grandfather, who was born in 1904, who was raised by his grandfather, who was born in the early 1800s. And so that doesn't seem too long ago to me. It's a difference, I think, in the way that my people think about history and past and Western. And in Western, you talk about 1800s, people think it was a long time ago. To me, it was the man who raised me's father's time frame of being alive. The stories, what he experienced, were that alive. I also have the honor of being one of our leaders for my community. And all those plants, animals, elements, indigenous peoples are still organic, still living as a part of creation, as a part of intact ecosystems. And for our people, we believe that we are a part of creation, equal to all other creation, and that we are a part of an intact ecosystem. See, most of my people, though, when you talk with them and you tell them food security, food sovereignty, GMOs, World Bank, these things, they're foreign concepts. But my people have an understanding of our place within creation. We have an understanding that when you act with disrespect, with greed, with ignorance, that it has devastating impacts on us as people. These teachings were passed down to us through our stories and then confirmed through our life's experience of the intimacy that we have with the rest of creation. Understanding what it means to be in 60 below weather and what type of skin and fur you must wear to stay warm. And what happens if you fall through the ice into the water? How do you survive? How do you respect all those elements and all this creation that we exist within as people? Those teachings, that knowledge still exists among my people. In my own mind, I say that our people are scientists. We're psychologists, we're healers, we're philosophers, and we're leaders. And in fact, among the greatest of those people are the indigenous elders that I've had the honor to sit with and learn from in my lifetime. The depth of their knowledge, the clarity with which they know is tremendous, overwhelming. Even brings you to tears sometimes when you can feel what it is that they're sharing with you. I've met one or two Western scientists who have that kind of effect. Maybe we heard one this morning talking about mushrooms. And imagine a whole bunch of them like that, though, and growing up with them, being around them all the time. See, our people's knowledge, traditional knowledge, came from many, many, many generations of experimentation, of study, and of just paying attention to life and one's own life. That's where our knowledge comes from. And it's not a knowledge that myself or any other indigenous person came to in their own lifetime through their testing. Maybe they refined it a little bit, but it was passed on to them from a long, long line of understanding. Many generations went into that. Unfortunately, right now my people are facing some challenges, politically speaking. Back in the 1800s, we were in that group of people, or even before that. We really need to get to know our history a little bit, but we were in a group of people, including Africans and indigenous peoples, who were deemed uncivilized, less than human, non-Christian, incapable of self-governance and a stable society. Although we happened to exist for 10,000 years quite well. But that was put upon us. So our lands were claimed by the Russians. Then the U.S. claimed to have bought us from the Russians, our lives included. We were actually named uncivilized in the Treaty of Cession. So we have that. Later, the laws that came out of the United States were based on that same framework, that we were incapable of self-governance, that we were less than human. So they had to manage us. They passed something as recently as 1971 called the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act. It extinguished our hunting and fishing rights as indigenous people. My people, we laugh about that because in our minds of thinking, the way we think about that is like, that would be like the government coming in and telling bowhead whales, no more plankton for you. Because in our minds, we are a part of the ecosystem. We are a part of the natural creation just as much as any other. And no other human being has the right to deny us our place within creation as indigenous people, as Alaska Native people, as Gwich'in people. We have built systems that are sustainable for us to be able to exist from that land over many, many generations. And now that's being taken away from us by a government that has a military power over us, ultimately. So we're put in that situation. So politically, we have that challenge. Environmentally, we have climate change that my friend Ben Paulus talked to you about yesterday that's moving into our communities very rapidly. I won't talk about the particulars. He did. Other toxins that migrate through the airs and happen to bioaccumulate and biomass in the Arctic and last very long because of how cold it is. Then on top of that, we have oil drilling, gold mining, zinc, copper, that are leaching toxins at unheard of levels. We have the only oil refinery or oil plant in the United States that doesn't have to follow EPA regulations, that just openly dumps into the Cook Inlet in Alaska because they say it's like a natural toilet. It flushes water in and out. We have a mine called the Red Dog Mine that has more violations than I think any other mine in this country as well. 3,000 violations or something a year that are placed upon it. And they pay their $6,000 fine a year to cover it, to the EPA, something like that. So we have these environmental impacts coming. Economically, and I tie subsistence to economy because that's our traditional economy, is living off the land. When you deny people to their means of subsistence, you're undermining a traditional economy of the people. So we have overfishing of salmon. I know in just one watershed alone, they take 60 million pounds of salmon a year. And so what's happening now is all of our villages that are lining all of these rivers where the salmon migrate are being told you could put in your fish wheel or you can put in your fish net for 2 hours on Sunday. On Monday, you can put it in for an hour. And our people are no longer able to feed ourselves off of that way of life. Meanwhile, they're still allowing the commercial fisheries to overfish the populations. You have sports hunting and sports fishing decimating moose populations, sheep populations. One of my traditional people told me the last time I was up in the mountains from my village, last month, I was kept up there with one of our elders, and another older man came up. He said he went a couple of mountains over from my village in the Brooks Range, and he said there was like a whole camp set up on this little gravel strip where these little cubs can land, and there were hunters hunting our sheep that we no longer can get because their populations are being decimated. And I found out that those people from the Lord for Aid are paying $25,000 a piece to get a dull sheep rack on their walls down here. And so our food security is being threatened by these practices. And our economy, it forces us, kind of like any people, when your means of subsistence get taken out, then you have to pay the $10 to get a piece of meat that was genetically modified and hormone injected from down here and sent all the way up to Alaska. And so economically it pushes our people into a forced position of poverty. Aside from that, economically, just so you know, I think it's in the hundreds of billions of dollars now that have been made by industry, state of Alaska government, and the United States government off of Alaska resources. Meanwhile, our indigenous peoples in Alaska remain among the most, if not the most impoverished people, economically speaking, in the United States of America. All based on that first idea that we are uncivilized and incapable of self-governance, therefore all these people have the right to do this to us. That's the situation we're in economically. But most importantly, we're being impacted heavily socially, culturally, and spiritually. As most indigenous people, and in fact as all of us, as I'll get to in a second, have been impacted by the process of colonization. The cultural and spiritual fabric of our societies have been torn, and our people are falling through the cracks. When I was a teenager not too long ago, every 10 days an Alaska Native teenager committed suicide. I grew up experiencing that, and these are put you through a place in life where it makes you really think about why are these things happening. We had the first Christianization, we had the boarding schools. My mom at 5 years old was shipped off to California to a boarding school. A lot of our people had that experience. So the child rearing experience was disconnected from one generation to the next. I was lucky my mom sent me. She had the vision when I was a little boy to send me to Arctic Village for my grandpa, my uncle, and my community to help raise me. But a lot of our people are struggling to know what it is to have a healthy relationship with their children, with their partners, because of these tears that have come through our people on those levels. And so we have a lot of work there. What I'm talking about is not only happening to my people. We're actually entering a period of what I would classify as a global crisis. I think more and more people are waking up to it as things like 9/11 and Katrina and our recent stock market crashes have happened, to the fact that the way of life, the economic, social, and political systems that have been built over the last several hundred years are fundamentally unsustainable, are unjust, oppressive, and manipulative. And now we're saying, oh my gosh, what do we do about that? And that's a situation, one of the things that I want to ask to us as humanity, are we on an emotional level, when we see suffering and feel suffering, experience it, on a physical level, are our bodies capable of planting big fields and harvesting that food for enough people? Intellectually, do we have the knowledge and understanding to move through these times, you know? And spiritually, do we have that fundamental grounding to creation and relationship with it that provides for us to move so stably and so balanced through the world? That's the question I'm posing to us right now. Because my belief is that it's in that direction we need to head for us to really address all the things that we're facing, you know. So, first of all, we have to understand the roots of the problems that we're facing. Otherwise, we're addressing symptoms. Second, we have to, you know, a part of understanding that root is actually looking into history, understanding the importance of traditional knowledge and wisdom, and having things be transparent and having truth be spoken everywhere we go. It's more important to humanity now than it has ever been in our collective history for those things to be occurring. We must also clarify, articulate, and put into practice the solutions that we know are there. Again, at this gathering, I think we've heard many people who have a clear vision of pieces of the solution. We have to also understand the connection between all those pieces of the solution and how they're connected to one another, so that our approach to addressing these things are holistic. And we understand the connection between a culture, a spirituality, and an economic and an environmental problem that we're addressing. We need to get to that place. I believe that in my experience of traveling this world now, that knowledge, the vision is there. It's being carried by many people, and that knowledge is being proliferated through the sharing of knowledge and understanding that's happening right now. And it's happening more and more in small circles in places like this, everywhere that I go. And more human beings are opening up and becoming receptive to hearing that. And then they become carriers of that fire. And we're bringing it into our own communities in the different ways and growing and healing at the same time as we're moving through that path. In my understanding, it's a return to our humanity, because we've been quite inhuman and inhumane for a long time to one another and also to Mother Earth. So we need to move to this place that we're moving to right now. So when we come to places like this, we hear so much that's happening, and we become overwhelmed oftentimes. And I think that our challenge is not to become overwhelmed. Take in the information. I think that our challenge really is to go through a process of healing that gets us to understand who we really are as an individual, our unique beauty and creativity that each and every one of us has as human beings, the blessing that has been bestowed upon us to be alive. And for us to be able to break down the social constructs that have prevented us from being able to be who we are, that have placed fear in our hearts from being able to stand up and just express ourselves freely. And through that also discover our own passions and our own direction, whether it's in farming, preventing GMOs, protecting a sacred site, building a natural home for yourself, working with youth, all of these things. We need all of them, but we need each of us to discover ourselves so we can direct our passion in the way that we're being called and fulfill our own unique place, whether that's mushrooms, or whether that's trees, or whether that's salmon, or whether that's farming. Whatever it is, they're all beautiful and they all need to be there, and we all need to be really creative when we work on them so that we can pull others into an understanding of this other paradigm, another world view that is sustainable, that is just, that is equitable, that is so important for us to be moving towards in this time. So I married a Navajo woman, a Diné woman, and so now I had this benefit of growing up and doing this work in Alaska, and then recently moving to the Southwest and learning about what many of you here are facing with the droughts. I planted my own corn for the first time. My own people laugh at me at home, you know, hearing that I'm planting corn, because everything just grows naturally where I'm from. You don't need to actually plant anything. It always just rebirths itself in every cycle, in every season. And so down here, I'm learning that, you know, in our house in Flagstaff, I'm learning what it means to maintain my sense of balance and integrity, knowing what it is that I understand. So we live 3 generations in the same house. We share our resources. We grow corn, squash, beans, peas. We raise chickens for eggs and for meat. Luckily, I have a stepfather there who's ingenious, and he designed and put up his own solar panels for our house and a wind tower. And so that I could still feel like I have that integrity as a human being, even living now in an urban setting in the Lower 48, to still be trying to practice what it is that I'm sharing in the world. And that's what we need to be doing as we receive the capacity to do that. Because there's too many people in this country that don't have that capacity. They're stuck in urban cities and economic situations where they're barely making, even with food stamps and other support, feeding themselves month to month. But we need to figure out what changes are needed to allow all of us to be able to move into that sort of a healthier relationship with each other in the land. So I have more to say, but I think I've shared enough for today with you all, and I hope that something that I shared was meaningful to you, that you could take, that you can carry and share with others as well. And it's been an honor for me to be invited here to share with you the few words that I have shared, and to learn so much from the other speakers that were here. It warms my heart, and it continues to inspire me that it is possible for us to work through these challenges that we face. But even yet, if we fail and as humanity we return back to Earth and another species takes its place, that's also okay, in my understanding. That has been shared with me, because we'll always be a part of this creation in some form or another. So thank you so much for being here and staying a little bit longer to hear my words, and blessings to all of you on your path and in the work that you're doing in the world, and thank you for doing it. Merci.
Thank you, Evan.